Hi, and welcome to Live with OAIB, a conversation where we discuss critical HR challenges that leaders are facing today. We use our 40 plus years of experience in HR, consulting, and executive coaching to go deep on the topics that are top of mind but often avoided. Thanks for joining us. Today's a special day because OAIB is approved by SHRM to offer professional development credits for the SHRM certification program for the SHRM CP and SHRM SCP. Attendees must view the presentation in its entirety to receive the SHRM activity code. You can claim this program for other kinds of HR certifications as well, but you'll need to provide the details to that certifying body. We only have pre-approval for code for SHRM certification. Hello, I'm Latanya Roberts, COO, Executive Coach, and Human Capital Strategist. I'm an integrator who takes a holistic approach to turn your vision for the organization or yourself into solutions that create inclusive cultures where all not only feel, but know that they belong and can thrive. My superpower is my ability to help my clients clearly articulate their needs and goals and then break them down into actionable steps that don't overwhelm them. Tawana, over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tawana Bagwad. I am CEO, Master Executive Coach, and Principal Consultant for OAIB. I am a visionary who believes in the power and promise of equity, and I help organizations become places where everyone has a deep sense of belonging. I cut through the background noise and coach individuals and groups, but especially leaders, to make a mindset shift starting with them being their authentic selves, aligning with their purpose, and being rooted in their own personal power. I would say my superpower is helping people become aware of their blind spots so that they can put the oxygen mask on themselves and then make others feel safe, heard, and inspired. Okay, today's discussion is going to be a good one. I'm always excited when I have an opportunity to speak with you all. Latanya, how about you share with everyone
Mhm.
what we'll be covering today?
Sure. So, as always, our topic comes from conversations that we've had with clients and also with people, with our peers in our industry. And we're talking about why onboarding is the number one process for producing the next generation of leaders. Onboarding, as we know, has evolved drastically over the last few years, with some of it going from being 100% in person to 100% remote. And now, with people returning to the office, we have this hybrid version of onboarding. And a lot of lessons have been learned. So, today we're going to get into that. So, one of my first question, of course, we have to start with our foundation. How do you define the onboarding process?
I would tell you that onboarding is critical, right? So, when we think about the employee life cycle and there being six phases: attraction, recruiting, onboarding, development, retention, and separation. Although all of these phases are critical to a healthy employee experience, I would say that onboarding is the phase that ties them all together.
Mm-hmm.
Onboarding is important because it acclimates employees to their role, the company's philosophy, and what the company has to offer. It also engages employees, which helps create employees that are committed to the company's success and helps retain new hires by making them feel welcome. And I'll say that again, making them feel welcome. It is so critical that we pause to understand and define what feeling welcome really means.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And why is it so important for us to have this onboarding process?
Right. Because today's workforce is so dynamic and companies have so much uncertainty around their bottom line, smart organizations should always look for ways to guarantee that this process is doing exactly what it was intended to do.
Mm-hmm.
Ensuring employees are committed, engaged, and feel welcome. Did you hear that? Feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Most importantly, onboarding should cover what new hires want from it. They want to learn how to do their job quickly and efficiently so they can do it well. So I would say the onboarding process is an internal step to prepare our next generation of leaders to propel us into the future. This is why this process is so important and should be a business priority that is invested in and done right. So, if you really think about it, during the onboarding process, the new hire, as well as the company, is evaluating the commitment level of each other. So, once the company made the offer letter, then they're all in, right? To what
Mhm.
level remains to be seen, but they're ready to invest by extending the offer. But on the other hand, the new hire is now inside the organization and looking to see if everything lines up to what the company said it would be. And the first thing they are looking at is through the lens of their heart.
Mhm.
Do I feel welcome? Is this a place I can have a long term career? Because I see they take care of their people. These are the questions that they're asking outside of we've already negotiated salary and vacation and all those basic needs. So people are moving towards feeling. This is something we have to think about as we are bringing in new hires. These are our next generation of leaders. If you don't invest in them, someone will or may not, right?
Mhm.
But do we
Mhm.
want to leave it to chance?
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people think of onboarding, they rely on HR, but we know that there's a lot of other players that are involved in the onboarding process. So, who else would you say is involved?
Everyone. But if I
Yes.
were to call them by name, right, I would definitely say that HR is the ones that are responsible for putting the framework around what does an intake process look like, right?
Hmm.
But the manager should be right there, lockstep and sync with the HR leader. Then there's the new team that the new hire is joining. Clients, customers, donors, they also play a critical role as part of the introduction, right? Welcoming them to the team, helping them to understand the role that they play and how critical it is. I would tell you, upper management should be reinforcing the vision, the strategies, and that the new hire can see how the work that they are doing is going to roll up to the bottom line or big picture. IT is critical, right? We can't just give them the equipment and say, go. I would also tell you ERGs, affinity groups, play a critical role, right? That
Hmm.
you want people to see other people that look like them, that have something in common with them, that could potentially share how they've navigated. Then you have buddies, mentors, coaches. You got peers or cohort members. Some new hires come in as groups, and that's also critical to leverage those memberships to keep the group moving together as they have similar experiences. I would also tell you subject matter experts or trainers. The most important person involved in the new hire onboarding process, if it's working well, right, is the person. It's the new hire, right? And if it's not working, the new hire should be speaking up because we are developing the future leaders. So it's important for new hires to give feedback on what they were expecting, what's working, and that they're able to do that with someone that is paying attention and can make a difference. So, as you can see, everyone has a responsibility to the success of a new hire in this onboarding process. But most people don't see it this way, nor take any responsibility for how new hires onboard to their work, to their team, to the organization, or the company as a whole.
Absolutely. And so one of the misconceptions is that onboarding starts on day one, right? But it starts before day one.
Absolutely.
Right, the person is introduced to your culture through that recruiting process. They get a sense of how the organization operates, who the people are, and what it'll be like to work there. And once the offer is made and it's accepted, they're telling you that they're interested in continuing that working relationship with the organization, right? They're observing how things go as they come on board. That includes the resources that they're provided, the people who actually offer support, and so much more. And this is something that really has an impact on how the person feels, their experiences as they start to onboard the organization. So back in 2010, Sherm Foundation and Taylor Bauer, they introduced this concept of the 4 C's of traditional onboarding.
Mhm.
And they listed them as clarification, compliance, connection, and culture. And in 2023, they are still absolutely very necessary and important, especially as we have this hybrid type onboarding or people that are reboarding as they started during the pandemic and now they're coming into the offices for the first time. So some of these things look like sending your welcome message and even care packages, making introductions to the team,
Mhm.
sending out the employee handbook and other really, really important information. Offer instructions. How do you actually access company resources and benefits to the portal? I've heard of some companies, they have the 45-minute rule where as soon as you get on board, within 45 minutes, you should have access to every single thing. Some people are doing site visits even before day one, or
Mhm.
just introducing them to their clients or their customer services just to make sure that they understand. A few years ago, Gallup did a study and it showed that while only 12% of employees felt that their company did a great job of onboarding, those employees were nearly 3 times as likely to say that they have the best possible job ever, right?
Right.
So that onboarding experience is so, so important. And even with that group, overall 29% of new hires felt that they were prepared and supported to excel in their new role. So if you're looking at onboarding as a process that just it starts on day one, you are missing a huge opportunity to capitalize on the engagement and the fact that the person is super excited to join your organization.
Can I just build on one point? I
Mhm,
love the 4 C's, right? The
mhm,
clarification, the compliance, the connection, and the culture. And this is not to take away from, compliance at all, right? We're going to tick the box. We're going to make sure we get the I-9s in place and all those things. We're going to make sure that we understand people banking situations so that they can get paid. All of those things become so critical. The clarification, which is the first C, I
mhm,
think is huge because folks need to understand what their job is
right.
coming in the door. And when I say that, you and I both know that to see something written than to see something live and in action lives very differently. But at least they should have some baseline understanding around what is their role, right? Are they in
Mhm,
a team and setting? Are they in hybrid working, as you mentioned? Those things become so critical. But these last 2 C's for me, connection and culture, it goes back to feeling welcome. Can you have someone to have a sense that they will feel welcome before they even enter an organization?
mhm,
Absolutely. Are we doing the intentional work to think about what those experiences look like before someone hits the door? And then is that being lived in the culture, right? Because we also know that organizations can do a great job being led by HR to make sure that we're human centered, right?
mhm,
And then they can enter into a culture that may not feel as welcome as what they
mhm,
got on paper or their interaction. So we have to make sure that we're being intentional not only about the compliance piece, but also about the clarity and the connection, and that they're entering a culture that is reflective of, let's say, the good experience
mhm.
that you gave them on the front end as they started their transition into the onboarding process.
Right, I love that. So let's really get into some of the tactical stuff because everyone asks, how do we actually do it? And there's some common onboarding practices out there now. Some people go above and beyond, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But what are some of those common onboarding practices?
So I think we hit on a couple of them, right? But if we start off with everyone offer letter needs to be super clear about are you exempt, non-exempt,
Mhm,
vacation, salary, those basic things, what your title would be, what's your start date, etc. And then there's typically a welcome letter. That's the rah-rah to make sure everyone feels that they know they're coming and they're excited about having them there. I would tell you it is so common and should be a practice that you provide a new hire with a resource list, right? How to help them begin to navigate with who they need to talk to regarding IT, for example, should be at the top of the list. Where do they get their equipment from? Who are some of their team members that they're going to need to um, have interface with on some daily basis? Or if there is mentoring or training that they need to take, and how do they go about signing up for it? So there's a lots of things that could be on this resource list, if you will. And then, of course, we got to spend time with HR to get the paperwork right. Whatever we haven't solidified or finalized during the call it initial welcoming process, that we tidy up those things. I would tell you receiving equipment is so important. That in and of itself, right, is a task to get someone situated, whether it be at home or in an office space. Then here's a very important one. Managers, you're so busy, but you got a new hire coming. You need to make time for that day at least to meet with your new hire, right? So Gallup finds that when managers take an active role in onboarding, employees are 3.4 times as likely to strongly agree that their onboarding experience was exceptional. So people want to know that their manager cares, right? If nobody else cares, the person that is going to be the one that's guiding you through your onboarding, that is helping you to learn the ropes of the company, that is helping you to understand your role within the company, you as a manager should feel an obligation to support your new hire and to take time to invest in the completion of their onboarding. It sets them up for success as well as you, right? Getting assigned a project or a team is common practice, right? Get them very clear on what they're going to be contributing to, what are the measures of success, who's going to be partnering with them to deliver that, and what role does each team member play in the success of their project. Introductions to other critical team members is also common practice in onboarding. I would also tell you that on average, which is saddening to me, by the way, that normally an onboarding practice have been 1 to 2 weeks, right? A couple of days with HR, get your equipment, hit the ground running, and you'll meet people along the way. I would tell you that I do not consider that, although a common practice, to be a successful one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's just the basics of onboarding. And
Right.
we've seen some companies that have done a really, really good job at doing it. And some of my past employers did a phenomenal job of onboarding people. What have you seen companies do really well when it comes to onboarding their new team members?
Yeah, this excites me. So outside of call it the basic practices that we just talked, right? I think it's so important for you to provide a new hire, a mentor or a buddy, right? It just absolutely is something that is needed. And if you're not doing it, I want to encourage you to start immediately, right? Assign to a group or cohort or chat IM group. If you have new hires that are coming in together, formulate a group or cohort. Get them on a chat or an IM where they can communicate and go back and forth with each other. As you all know, when you're having a new experience, to go at it alone, right, feels lonely or isolated. But to be in a cohort or with a group of people that are having similar experiences, that allows you to begin to lean on each other, to share information freely. It also creates a psychologically safe space because everyone wants to come in and make a good impression, right? And they may not want to ask the dumb question. And I put that in air quotes because I don't believe in such. But I would say that we want to show up put together. So we don't want to ask questions that we believe should already be known. So this cohort or in some type of chat or group I am has been proven to be very valuable as we are hearing feedback from new hires. Thirdly, I would say provide training beyond the HR standards, right? So I can honestly tell you that I personally, going back 25 years, dating myself, believe that I had a great onboarding experience. And true to statistics, I then stayed with the same company for 22 years. And I would tell you that there was a huge investment on training. And if I'm really honest, I was trained out, right? I was just like, oh my gosh, please don't take another training. But I prefer to be on that end of the spectrum than not having any investment. So some trainings beyond HR standards should look like DEI. Of course, I'm not going to miss an opportunity to plug their time management, communications, right? Using internal um, very specific to people's roles, right? What are some of the internal processes that they should be familiar with or know? Delegation, accountability, all those basic concepts that you would expect a manager of others to know. New hires should begin to have some foundational understanding of that as well as they're navigating through. And managers, don't let me scare you because all of it doesn't have to be on you or even the HR department. This is where those ERGs and affinity groups come in, investing in the group to do training as well. Employees who strongly agree, they have a clear plan for their professional development and are 3.5 times more likely to strongly agree that their onboarding process was exceptional. Again, continue to get this when people are investing in new hires, right? They strongly agree that their onboarding process was not just good, but they're using language like exceptional. Then scheduling one on ones, join ups. You should do that for them. Great for them to reach out to people as a confirmation, but there should be some standing one on ones that's already on their calendar as a new hire coming into the organization. Have an opportunity to do a meet and greet with upper management. New hires want to know that upper management care about their um, progression in the organization, that they themselves are willing to come down for where they sit up high and be able to connect with new hires as again they are our future leaders of the company. Provide networking opportunities for them to meet different departments, not just their teammates. And given the hybrid world that we're living in today, connectivity, connectivity, connectivity. There should be weekly check ins. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How was your meeting going, coming along? What trainings have you taken thus far? Do you feel like they're adding value to helping you understand how to navigate in the company? Create, share, and update their work plans. They should come in the door with a work plan that you've created, manager, for them. What are they going to be working on? What are their metrics of success? And as you well know, the first couple of months is really around that foundational things. So, not that they should come in and already hitting a milestone on a project within a month. Those are unrealistic expectations, but we hear them. We hear them quite a bit that new hires aren't meeting expectations. And when we look at their work plan, I would always respond, I believe this work plan is unrealistic for a new hire that is trying to navigate, meet people, learn the project, learn how things work in a company and in the organization. And then you're giving them metrics to meet in their first 30 or 60 days, a bit unrealistic. And then be okay with updating the work plan as you get to know the person, understand the person, how they work. That does not mean that you take away work, but updating it with either deliverables, connections, or some metrics. So important to have site, client, or customer visits when it is deemed necessary or important. But if you have multiple sites, give your new hire an opportunity to be able to look, engage into how the clients operate with your organization, what the customers are expecting from your organization, so they can see how they will fit in as well as contribute. Again, sharing helpful resources, those are things that will continue. But to give them as many as possible on the front end is huge. They'll know, they'll begin to figure things out and know when it makes sense, and you'll be guiding them along the way. Encourage them to join an affinity group or ERG. So important with foundational welcoming to the organization, connecting with people that are like minds is
Mhm.
also critical. And then finally, I would tell you, I told you that normally we've seen where onboarding processes are like a week or two. I would say that a good onboarding process is somewhere between 90 days, right? Or at least it will take a couple of months, 60 to 90 days, and even after that, because there's a constant learning, there's dynamics that are changing, their leadership is changing, team members are changing. All those things have an impact, and particularly when new hires become familiar with, and then there's a change.
Absolutely. One of the best onboarding practices that I experienced, consulting 17 years, working for some of the big firms and the smaller firms. But I love when they put us in a cohort,
Yeah,
and it was a cohort of your peers that were aligned to the same group as you, and there were scheduled networking events, at least one every month, where we got together to not just talk about the company, but also we got a chance to learn about each other. So there's the team building activities.
yeah,
And I found being with that company for at least 6 years, um, those were the people that were part of my cohort that I relied on as we were, moving up in the ranks and we were trying out different projects. I went back to a few people in that group, and it's kind of like your starting class in college or in high school. It's those were your people. Some other things that I saw were with the chats, the brand new analysts in the company. They and even with my daughter, I see this now as she's preparing for college. They jump into a chat and they connect, and that's how they were finding roommates, and they were doing vacations together. And you build this bond because nobody has the same experience as your starting class, so to speak. So definitely create those opportunities for people to connect because they're so powerful.
mhm. Great point.
So some of the other things we talked about the good, but of course there's some don'ts. We've seen some people or have heard about some people get it wrong. So want
Mhm.
to talk to us about what happens when they get it wrong.
Yeah. Well, let me start out by saying there are lots of places for things to go wrong, right? But the main way is not providing the proper support, whether that be resources, training, right? The frequencies of your check ins not being often enough, or assuming that they interviewed great, everyone loved them, that means that they know what to do on the job the way you all do it. I would say the other for me is, let's not talk about not communicating expectations. We talk about that first C around clarification, right? So communicating expectations is so critical. But what we have seen is that people sometimes have this sink or swim mentality when it comes to new hires. And it's unrealistic to have your expectation that people should know how to do things on day one. And I'm exaggerating by saying day one, but that translates to one, or month one for that matter. So thinking, the other one for me, my top three, and this would be the third one, is thinking that this process should be as short as possible. We're like, we got to get them in and let them hit the ground running, right? What is that? We have to provide them a foundation, a solid road for them to run on. So we looked at Gallup and said, has found that new employees typically take around 12 months to reach their full performance potential within a role. So I just mentioned 90 days for at least a good onboarding project. But Gallup has found that it takes about 12 months, right, for them to reach their full performance potential. So, with that in mind, we know that this is an investment. I would tell you another place where things have gone wrong is not taking into consideration diversity, whether it's diversity of thought, right? Experiences, backgrounds, approaches, even. Um, I think about one scenario where we were supporting a client where this organization has a way in which they write and they are killing it. They figured it out, they have their formula. And when they write grants, proposals, whatever, the likelihood that they're going to get funded is huge. And they don't allow no one to mess with that process. Great, got it. But those that are doing it well had to be taught. So they are very critical on new hires coming in on their writing style. And I constantly ask them, who have you invested in? What knowledge transfer have you done? Do you have a sound system to ensure that you're not hazing people that come in the door because they should already know how to do it your way? That's a real example of not taking into consideration diversity, that there is differences. That doesn't make it wrong. It may be different from the way that you do. So invest in the training and teaching, right? So, and I would say, that this is what you would want for others to take into consideration for you. So we should be extending that to our new hires. Assigning new hires to people that have never managed other people or are known to not be good managers. Assigning new hires to people that have never managed other people or are known to not be good managers. This is so important because sometimes we also will give a manager that does not have a good reputation a new hire to redeem themselves. I got a problem with that. I would, this is not intended to be offensive, but I would call new hires our babies in the company, however old they are. And we should not experiment with their success by trying to give another manager an opportunity to give it right. The organization should then invest in, right? Training, retraining, or coaching the manager and ensuring that their skills have been up leveled so they are prepared to manage people in general, or having them work with challenging clients without preparing them for those interactions. We all have challenging clients and customers. It is not about not having them to have the exposure, but it is about preparing them for those interactions so that they are set up for success. Also, another one for me is putting a new hire on a team that has an unwelcoming culture. I've said welcoming, welcoming, welcoming. That is one of the criterias that we are hearing from a lot of new hires. They
Mm.
want to know that they have a sense of belonging, right? That this culture is welcoming. So most times the new hire experiences hazing behavior or
Mhm.
exclusivity. That is so important for us to have at the top of mind when we are assigning new hires to different teams. According to the Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, employees turnover can be as much as 50% in the first 4 months for hourly workers and 50% in the first 18 months for senior outside hires, which equates to a loss of time and money. So we should look at these watch outs that we have shared with you today, where we know things have and will go wrong if you have not built in systems and processes to make sure these things are addressed on the front end.
Yeah, and speaking of loss of time and money, for those that like to see the actual dollars, One
Mhm.
of the stats that I saw was when a person leaves, especially so early on in their tenure at a
Mm.
company, it can cost the company anywhere from half their salary, sometimes to 2 times their
Yeah.
salary to replace them. Think about that. You're spending 6 figures, sometimes 7, depending on where you work or
Mhm.
close to it, and it's taking you double that to replace that person because what's walking out the door is their intellectual capital. It's all their years of experience that they would have brought, their innovation that they would
Yeah.
have brought, the time that it took to recruit.
Oh.
And if you're recruiting right now, you're on
Yes,
the struggle
lot.
bus with us, okay?
Right.
It is taking a lot of time and a lot of effort to find the person to come in. And then even when they come in, it's not guaranteed that they will stay,
That's right.
right? So think about that process from beginning to end, right? Who are they interacting with? What is the brand, the reputation that you're leaving with those people, whether it's their pre boarding to their onboarding and then getting them up to speed and really throughout that first year and sometimes year and a half, what's the impression that they're making of their company that you're working for? So we know there's a lot of ways to get it right. There's a lot of ways to get it wrong.
Mhm.
So, right? And if you have to do a do over because you got it wrong, that can look like so many things. And for those people that were hired during the pandemic and they started remotely
Yeah.
and are coming into the office, this do over applies to you as well. It's called reboarding,
Mhm.
right? Because let's be honest, we got a lot of it wrong when hiring people remotely when that was something that our company cultures had never experienced before.
Mhm.
There's a lot of intentional energy that goes into bringing that person on. So we got to hit the reset button and have a do over. So, Tawana, tell us what that could look like for some companies.
So I would absolutely encourage you and your organization to revisit your onboarding process often, right? And I love the reboarding. I think a lot of companies, organizations need to just adopt
Mhm.
reboarding, in particularly as we are returning back to work. But start by getting feedback from the last class or persons that have come through this process, right? And actually listen to what they are saying they wish they had when they were a new hire, right? Because they could say, oh, I was a new hire and that was 6 months ago. Maybe you still are a new hire, but the company may have said, your new hire ticket is gone. But the re onboarding, I think, is so critical, right? Start with the bare minimum, which we mentioned earlier, right? But then look at the things that meet the intention of an onboarding process to include head and heart, I like to say, right? So, head is, have you provided everything to this person so that their needs are met for them to do their job and to do it well? I just want you to sit with that question. And on the heart side, do they feel welcome? Do they really feel connected? Are they a part of this culture, right? Do they feel like they belong? Only they can ask, only they can answer that question. But I do believe that it's super important for us to pose it so that we can get some feedback on things that we can do different. Always room for improvement, right? So I will tell you a quick story. We had a client whose onboarding process was not yielding productive managers, right? Where they were willing and able to take on work the way they expected them to, which way they were hit the ground running, right? Sink or swim. You should be observing and picking up the things that we do and how we do them. And most of their new hires in the first 90 days, if they made it to 90 days, had some kind of performance issues, according to their manager. And I wouldn't necessarily say that all of them were performing up to par. I would say that the managers had some unrealistic expectations. So the new hires were not truly set up for success. So they asked us to come in and we looked deeper into these issues and we found a couple of opportunities, right? So when we're talking about doing it over, Their onboarding process was broken because the managers were not properly trained to manage others. So we had to do some foundational training just with managers of others, right? So that was a calibration that need to occur before you can then set expectations for the new hire. The onboarding time varied by team. So you can come in and you could be a new hire for 7 days, or you could be a new hire for 90 days and everything in between. So there was no consistency around the process timing and what the person should be experiencing through that time. They lacked providing the necessary resources to do their job. So if communications is critical, is writing grants is critical, the training was not occurring to ensure that that person had what they need to live up to or meet the performance expectation. They did not provide support, and this support speak to the mentoring, the buddying, the coaching, peer to peer, etc., that could show them the ropes very differently from how their manager would approach. Right? You need someone where you don't have to be all button up, and they help you
Mhm.
to
Right.
get button up for when you go on and presenting out. With our coaching, we did map out a detailed program that went beyond the first week. Yay. They ensured everyone knew their role, right? They trained all the managers, they did regular check ins, and they identified managers. Listen to this, that should not manage people or
Mhm.
new hires in particular. And they surveyed each new hire class, that last class, each new hire in that class, to see if they are meeting the mark with a continuous improvement mindset. So this is ongoing, right? We're going to get it just when we think we got it right. A new dynamic shows up and we got to pivot. It's okay. But this is a process that I'm encouraging all organizations to continuously look at.
Yeah, the identifying people that should not be managers of
It's
others.
beyond new hires, right?
That's just
Beyond
throwing
new
people into
hires,
the lion's den, right? If you know
right?
this person has a track record of not managing people well, why
Yeah,
would you send the new person in there?
right.
It's not good for them. So I'm glad that that was able to work out where, hey, you have to really, turn the mirror around and look at yourself and figure out where do we make some changes. And maybe that person, while they can't manage other people, they're still good for the organization, and that's
Absolutely.
okay too. So we come
Right.
up with different career paths for people. The other thing that we also find and we're talking to our clients about is the fact that while there are phases of the employee life cycle, they're all interconnected, and onboarding is no different. So, how does onboarding impact the other phases of the employee life cycle?
I like to refer to onboarding as the glue. I call it the springboard, right? It's lots of things, at least in my experience, because you can get each one of those phases wrong, right? It's
Mhm.
six of them. You can get each one of them wrong at different points through an employee life cycle. But let's say that we didn't do such a good job of attracting, but we managed to get in qualified candidates. But a good onboarding experience will solidify the new hires, yes, to stay, to retain them, right?
Mhm.
But if you do a good job on onboarding, then you have taught the employee how to do their job well and prepares them for the development phase,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Because they now have something to springboard from into different roles, experiences, assignments that ultimately could lead them to advancements or promotions. So it's so tied together. But if they did not get the foundational understanding of how to navigate the company, because
Mhm.
those things sometimes are bigger than them just learning their job, because you could do your job well, and we have many people that do their job well,
Mhm.
but they don't do a whole lot of other things that they we would have caught or be able to train on during that onboarding process that could
Mhm.
give us a more complete package, if you will, of an employee's performance. But if they do decide to separate from the company, they should become an ambassador, right?
Right, right.
Because their lived experience was good enough to recommend someone to join the company.
Mhm,
So every separation is not a bad thing. People move on for lots of different reasons. It doesn't have to be because it's a bad experience, right? That better opportunity, you name it.
mhm,
Onboarding to me is the glue to all of the other phases of the employee life cycle. And I would just say, don't miss the opportunity to develop our future workforce by giving them the proper onboarding experiences to your company. But more importantly, we're giving them the importance of what a professional career experience look like, because they should now be able to compare wherever they go. I am a new hire and my experience should look like this. And
right.
the foundation is someone has helped and supported me, that I feel welcome. One. Number two, that I understood my job and I did it well and efficiently.
Mhm.
And it prepared me to propel in the organization. I had them two P's there.
That's great. Okay, so we've talked a lot about, how do you do it right? How do you enhance what's going well? And then how do you get it wrong? But we know an onboarding process or any other process has to still be measured. How do we know we're getting it right? How do we understand when we need to pivot? So, what are some of those metrics that organizations can start to look at that will help them know if they're on the right path or not?
Engagement, 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 right? So we have to look at, there's several questions as an HR practitioner that falls under this category called engagement, right? You're looking at people level of engagement on, do they know their work? Do they know, will they recommend this to be a place to be, right? When we think about engagement, we're looking at people productivity level. But it's more around their understanding of the organization. How does it
Mhm,
work? Do they know their job? Would they recommend the organization to other people? Right. So they show up as ambassadors because they know or have had great experience. I would
mhm,
tell you the other thing that is important, which I said earlier, is feedback, right? Let's get feedback from the hiring manager on the time it took to bring in a new hire and to have them to be achieving at the expected performance level. That's so important. And now I want to be super clear that that varies based on people's skill level, capability, projects that they're working
mhm,
on. So there's a lot of factors there. But new hires managers should be able to say, based on this project, based on I brought in four other new hires, it should take them about. And is that really the case, or are you seeing it take them longer? Right?
mhm,
Targeted feedback from the new hire on their experience should also be a metrics where we are getting feedback from them on their experience. And does it line up with our intention? To what degree the new hires are advocating for this workplace, right? Are they somewhere having conversations that speak to, hey, I work for this great company. They totally have invested in me. I do feel welcome when
mhm,
I joined the organization. They have trained me, they've given me a buddy, I'm in a cohort, all these things. So as they are putting that out into the world, people are saying, what company do you work for again? I want to come join that company,
right,
right? And then performance of the new hire overall. Are we giving them realistic expectations? What does the 30, 60, 90-day work plan look like for a new hire? And is it consistent? Yes, their roles can be different. So there'll be some very specific technical deliverables that they have, but that foundational, right? Do they have it and are they able to now deliver at the level that we expect? And
mhm,
then first and second year retention rates are so critical. As we gave you some stats, about 50% are leaving the organization. We need to be tracking attrition when
mhm,
it's hourly workers, and then 50% in the 18-month with more salary or senior What does that say about our organization?
Right.
Someplace there's a letdown. There is some kink in our chain that we need to work through. And I would be really surprised if we got a person through onboarding successfully and they felt good about it, right? That we weren't able to sustain them because they would be comfortable speaking up. They would be seeking their buddies and support
Mhm.
systems to help navigate maybe a bad manager, right?
Right.
Maybe an unrealistic project, maybe an irate donor or client. We can manage through those things. So those are some of the metrics that I would say is top of mind when I'm thinking about how we would evaluate the success of an onboarding program.
Yeah, and those are such great starting points, right? And we can always go deeper, but if anything, know your numbers, know where you are, and get the feedback from the people. So that brings us to the end, and so just final question here: what's one action that people can take right now to improve their onboarding process?
Be okay with re-onboarding
Mm,
and get feedback from your last cohort or new hires that came in the organization. And just, you know, get a feel for how their experience was. And does it line up with what you envisioned or imagined or expected
right.
it to be? And if it's out of alignment, commit to foundationally fix the onboarding process.
Well, there it is. Drop the mic. I was going to say the same thing. Talk
Hey,
to the
I
people.
love it when we're aligned.
Talk to the people. I mean, honestly, look at the last 6 months to a year of your new hires, right? Because you're going to get a feel of the people that came on that were 100% remote, or and those
Right.
that were hybrid, and those that, if you're back in the office full time for some, you'll get that good mix. Either do one-on-one interviews or do focus groups, but get that data and truly figure out how you can make the process better. Think of it as a red light, green light, yellow light. Like, what do we need to stop doing? What do we need to continue doing? And what do we need to watch out for?
Yeah.
And then take action, right? Like, don't just collect the data and then do nothing. That is one of the things that we hear people all the time say, well, they got our information, they asked us, and then nothing happened.
Right.
So make sure you definitely take action on that. All right. So thank you, everyone. Again, this was another live with OAIB. We so appreciate your time, and hope that you join us again first Tuesday of the month. We'll be back for another rendition of what you all are talking about and what our clients are talking about. And for today, OAIB is approved by SHRM to offer PDCs for the SHRM CP and the SHRM SCP. The session has been approved for one PDC. You can claim recertification credit with program code 23K2K6H. And let me get that up here for you all. That's 23K2K6H. And it's important that you keep track of the sessions that you view, as OAIB will not be able to provide you with the record of the sessions you've attended. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.